Hey guys, welcome to Serious Typology. I've got like three new subscribers, so welcome. This is what we do. We just talk about the Enneagram. In this video, it's gonna be more rambly than most. It's not super specific. It's kind of like springing out of some frustration from someone who's in my server. And by the way, if you're into typology and you're not a dick, you can always ask about in the comments to get an invite to the server. It's pretty chill. We just talk about voltology, typology, pop culture, enneagram, obviously. And we're all just kind of learning together, like what do these types mean? What do they do? And one thing that's consistently like this black hole in the enneagram is five. Like, what is five doing? Who even knows? And I think it doesn't help that so many people of the last 20 years who have been teaching Enneagram and bringing it to the main stage are mistyped as either being a five or a five fixed when they're not. And then you're putting a lot of yourself, you're projecting your own attributes into the five space when you're probably not even typed. So I thought we could look at to get some clarity here, like a very extreme example of a five that I found last month, which I don't know, seems like somehow it seems like months ago, but so I found this little infograph online just scrolling as I do. This dude, Christopher Knight, in 1986, he quit his job, drove into the Maine woods until his car ran out of gas. Once his car was dead, he got out, then stayed in the woods for 27 years. He lived completely alone in a hidden camp. The only words he spoke to another human being for 27 years was a simple hi to a passing hiker. To survive, he stole food and gas from nearby vacation homes more than 1,000 times, yet was never caught once. In brutal winters, he'd erase his footprints and wander at night using military level survival tricks just to stay alive. In 2013, after 27 years, Christopher, now 47, was tracked down by police after surveillance camera caught the ghost of the woods. He was arrested but released after serving just 7 months for his crimes. So there you have it, Christopher Knight. Here's a picture of him when he was young. Like, he certainly has this like detached alien vibe, like nerdy, ectomorphic. Like he's there, but he's not really there, and kind of he looks a little bit disassociated, like you would see with a nine. I think he's probably nine fixed. He's probably like the flatliner, like core five with a nine fix and a three fix. But anyways, just the fact that he felt such an extreme need to withdraw from the world, and he pulled it off for all that time and survived in these brutal Maine woods in winter. Wasn't caught, had no meaningful interaction with another human being. I think it's points for a double withdrawn. And then, so obviously, like curiosity is piqued, and unfortunately, hey, Lappies, what's up? There's like no real footage of him except for like what he was forced to partake of as far as like being exposed in the court system and having to figure out how to navigate the judicial system after going it alone for so long. So there's not really a whole lot there. For typology stuff, the best thing I found was this guy's interview who became his special friend and was interacting with him when he wouldn't interact with really anyone else. But it's kind of interesting how that came about, the interactions. the the relationship that they were able to form. So we'll just go through it.
For nearly 3 decades, Christopher Knight lived alone and largely undetected in the woods. Known as the North Pond Hermit, he survived by stealing from homes and cottages in nearby communities and was ultimately arrested by the Maine State Police. That's where journalist and author Michael Finkel picked up on the story, which he pieces together in his new book, The Stranger in the Woods, The Extraordinary Story of the Last True Hermit, and brings Michael Finkel to our studio tonight. Welcome.
Thank you, Neil.
You have had quite the life, but you're here to talk about the book. How did you first learn about Christopher Knight?
So Chris Knight was arrested, breaking into a summer camp that was closed for the season. And he didn't tell the arresting officers too much the night he was arrested, but everything he said was sort of defied belief. Like he had said he'd been sleeping in the woods for 27 years without even lighting a fire. He said he'd never seen the internet, made a phone call, spent any money, driven in a car, used an indoor toilet. And then the officers took him to jail. And I read about it just on the website of the Kennebec County Journal, a small paper in central Maine. And everything I read was like defied belief, beggared the imagination. And then the last paragraph, I was thinking, maybe this guy's just crazy. And then the last paragraph said that Chris Knight had stolen thousands upon thousands of books. I'm like, oh man. And then I was like, it went from.
It's funny of like all these breaking and enterings that he committed. He never stole jewelry. He only took enough food, like to literally survive, but he stole thousands and thousands of books. And I'm like, if this isn't some core five bullshit, like I need to get away from people to escape to such an extreme degree that I'm literally gonna just suffer in the woods and keep myself my company and mentally stimulated with books. That's all I care about.
My curiosity mode to like journalistic obsession mode, and ended up writing him a letter, handwritten, pen, paper, the whole old
What's that?
Yeah,
Pen and paper?
I used to have these things called envelopes and stamps. Yeah, you don't remember.
No.
And I mailed it to the Kennebec.
All right, so this guy right here, what's his name? I think it was Michael Finkel. Michael Finkel? Yeah, Michael Finkel. He's definitely a six-wing seven, and I think like a secondary three-wing two fix, probably a Bermuda.
County jail, and I didn't know, but to my great surprise, Chris Knight wrote back.
Now, in the letter that you wrote to him, because he had a lot of people asking for his time, documentary crews, everybody was really interested in him because he was somebody that people were trying to find for a very long time. What did you write in the letter that you hoped that he would connect with and respond to you?
I mean, I wrote from the heart, to be honest with you. I've spent most of my life in Montana. I love sleeping outdoors. I've spent hundreds of nights in the wild, and I like reading books. And this was like the world champion of my two favorite passions, camping out and reading books. And I told him I was a journalist right off the bat. I didn't want to, mislead him. And I just said, every question, everything I read about you makes me want to ask you 10 more questions. And I don't know, maybe it was just like the handwritten aspect of the letter that made him respond.
But in the book, you write that you actually revealed a part of your life. You used to be a journalist at the New York Times. What happened there?
Yeah, so I'm 100% human. I was fired from a job for the New York Times for making a composite character, which is combining lots of real people into one fictitious person for a story about child labor.
Okay, so he made shit up and he got fired from his job. And you like disclose that. I'm like, I am human. I'm human.
In West Africa, and that's against the rules of journalism. And I was fired from the New York Times, and I admitted that, right, to Chris Knight right away, that I'm not on my high horse. I am not, I'm an imperfect person, and perhaps
He's thinking that our five here connected with him because of his special handwritten letter and his disclosure of his own vulnerability and humanity in a very six way. Like, I lied. I got fired from my very serious journalism job. And he's thinking that was the hook for this guy, but it wasn't.
the fact that he was trying to also live up to a very high ideal, but was reduced at times to stealing, maybe that also caused an emotional connection. I do want to say, before we go on, that everything in this book is 100% true.
And even at the back, you detailed how
I'm not lying this time, guys.
you came up with information, correct?
Yeah, I hired two fact checkers. I had both his lawyer and the prosecuting attorney look it over and the police officers. And if I was 99% sure of something, I cut it out. Not good enough.
But when he wrote back after you wrote him, he seemed to connect with something that you probably were just writing to write. He talked about the supermoon. And so he connected to that. Were you surprised by that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little geeky, but
Yeah.
there was the summer solstice, which usually happens around June 20th, and the supermoon, which is the full moon that's closest to Earth. The moon has a slightly elliptical orbit. We don't need to geek out too much about the moon, but they happened on the same day for the first time in like about a century. And I was like, I'm gonna go camping that night, supermoon, and it seemed like the nerdiest like reason to go camping, full moon, supermoon, and solstice. But I mentioned it in a letter, and just like by this like man, I almost want to call it like a divine coincidence. Like Chris Knight in jail, a person who had not spoken with anyone in 2017.
Okay, this is all like superfluous bullshit. He managed to tap into one of Christopher Knight's interests, talking about this like this unusual condition, the moon. And so, in a sense, Christopher saw him as someone who could possibly give him some mental stimulation or someone he could like converse with on some of his interests. And that's why he responded.
Years realizing smart man. He's a smart man. He realizes, man, I better practice talking. And he wanted to talk about the super moon and the solstice. And so he brings it up to other inmates, and they're like,
The what?
What are you talking about? Get away, you weirdo. Yeah. And then he opens my letter and he sees that that's what I wanted to talk about. And so that's sort of
Exactly. So he's okay, now I'm forced to be around people, but I can't talk to the normies, the plebs about my interest in the moon cycles. So this guy just kind of falls into his lap and incidentally makes himself kind of like a target of like, oh, this is someone I can actually interact with in this very narrow and specific band of what I'm interested in. So, like, if you were trying to converse with the five, like a core five, you're gonna have to meet them on their turf. And if you're throwing some nonsense at them that they are not interested in, they will just ignore you.
I mean, it's coincidence, but it almost feels like something more.
Like the universe conspired to bring you.
Like we were supposed to talk, yeah.
Was any
That's his nine fix.
part of his story, did you find it, were you skeptical at all about any part of his story?
Any part.
All of it?
Every part. It's like, I mean, this is literally unbelievable. I mean, Central Maine is so cold. I mean, I grew up most of my life in Montana. We have cold weather there, and of course, you have cold weather here. But this is this wet, windy cold, like no fire. I mean, I feel like I'm sort of tough. I would last like 20 minutes without a fire. This guy lasted 27 winters, so there was no fire. It was unbelievable. How do you go 27 years without seeing a doctor?
Yeah, electrical thingy, right? Like, didn't he boil water and stuff?
Yeah, he had a little two-burner Coleman camp stove.
A thingy.
Let's just go with the technical term, Kellen. It's a thingy. I can tell you spent you had a thingy. It was connected to another thingy. Where he stole propane tanks, and he didn't use it for heat, but he cooked a lot of macaroni and cheese. And mostly what he used it for was to melt snow to make drinking water during the winter.
Did he keep a journal?
He never wrote a single thing down. He said, like, when you write something down, I mean, here I am with a book, but I'll make fun of people who write books. He's like, you write something down, you're putting your thoughts onto paper and saying, look at how great I am, look at me, read me. It's like very outward. It's like, oh, hello world, look at me. And he didn't want to do anything like that. If he wrote something, if he said if it was important, he would keep it in his head. And if it wasn't important, then it wouldn't be worth writing down.
Well, you're right. The connection between seclusion and spiritual.
And there's something interesting there about like incompetency in head, because I think that sometimes in some of the typing videos I've seen on fives, it's like, oh, well, they're a five because they're a head type. They're not really doing attachment and they seem weird. But then there's like still some vagueness, like, is Grimes a five? Um, if she is a core withdrawn type, if she is a core rejection type, why is she so like out there? Why is she so positive and zany? And it's like, I really think part of the problem here, and another person in my server, Tenundrum or Tuna, this has long been an area of frustration for him of like, all these mistype fives, and it seems like no one's really getting at the essence of what five is in isolation. And I think the best way to get there is by taking it back to the triads, object relations, the Hornevian thing of like, you have to be seeing withdrawn. Are they pulling away from the world as a survival strategy? You have to see competency. Is there like some head anxiety around competency or like polishing an idea or gaining enough expertise before you even can engage with the world? And also rejection, like a hoarding of knowledge in a specific area as a point of leverage and possible connection with people where you have to show up as an expert in something that's special and unique to you. And like if you don't see all those components, then can you really say that that person is a five?
Awakening is profound. And I think a lot of us have that view. Did he have a spiritual awakening being alone all those
Yeah.
decades?
So if you look throughout history, the number one reason why people abandon society is sort of to commune with God. And I mean, even like Jesus spent 40 days in the Judean desert, Muhammad spent all that time in the cave in Mecca, and Buddha sat under a tree in present day India, and like 3 billion people follow the religions brought back by those three basically hermits. Mm-hmm. Chris Knight did not follow a formal religion, but he told me, and I find this to be kind of profound. I said, were you lonely out there? Because although he read books and listened to the radio, for the most part, what he did was what you and I would call nothing. He sat there and I said, were you lonely? And he said to me, he felt the opposite loneliness. He said he was never for an instant lonely. He felt completely connected with like the rest of the universe. And I'm not capturing the poetry of his language that well in this interview. I tried to do it in the book, and he said no, he felt absolutely connected and communal, like he was like fulfilled. It was kind of a profound thing to hear.
So, and I think that's points for like the 5-9 stem of only feeling completely himself when he is withdrawn from the world to such an extreme degree, and he's surrounded by nature and he can just exist without any external obligations or expectations of him. He's so removed, he's so rejecting, Bob's a rejection type, the outside world to only pursue what he wants to and to live on his terms. And this guy probably is schizoid. He could probably meet the diagnostic criteria. And like, I'm not saying you have to be five, but like five core is such an extreme type that I think it's really exemplified in this guy, where he is doing enough to survive, foregoing like creature comforts. He never lit a fire to stay warm. He would actually get up and walk around in the middle of the night to keep his body temperature up so he wouldn't, freeze, get hypothermia. And he was doing all of this in service of the isolated five head, where I am not impacted by society or their bullshit, their obligations. I can just be out here and exist and read.
Hear him talk about how happy he was despite suffering in winter and being completely cut off. He said he planned to stay out there for his entire life.
Wow. So you communicated with him through the letters, and then one day you decide, I'm just going to get on a plane and go to the jail that he was in and say hi and introduce myself. What was he like when you met him in person?
It was not the most comfortable encounter I've ever had in my life. So, right, we exchanged letters, and as you can imagine,
Christopher was not happy to see this dude show up. He's not happy.
And though Chris Knight said he deserved to be in jail, he said he was a thief. He said to me, he said, Mike, do not romanticize me. And sometimes I speak warmly about him, but he deserved to be in jail, but still he was suffering after someone spends all that time completely free in the woods and then they're locked up in a cage. You can
I
imagine.
was gonna ask about that because he's in the woods, it's open, it's big, he's by himself, he goes to jail, small quarters,
Yeah.
noise. What was it like for him being in jail?
Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, he suffered mightily, and that's the reason why he stopped writing letters. He said for a while, writing letters sort of relieved the stress and difficulty of jail, and then it just got too much for him, and he stopped writing letters. And that's when I flew to Maine and checked in at the visiting booth and was allowed to visit with Chris Knight. And it was a sort of a cumbersome thing. We were in a jailhouse visiting booth. There was like a piece of a thick plexiglass dividing us, and we had to talk on these old-fashioned phone receivers. You know how like when you meet somebody, there's always like a nod, a hello, even if you're not going to talk to the person on the airplane for the rest of the flight, you just say like hello, some acknowledgement. He did none of that with me. He wouldn't even make eye contact with me, no smile. And I didn't know what to do. And he had written in his letters how comfortable he was with silence. And I decided I'm just going to sit here silently. And it's really hard to sit silently in front of someone. Like if you and I just didn't do anything for 2 minutes, I think everyone would change the channel.
Yeah.
Right. Like even 10 seconds.
10 seconds, yeah.
Yeah, right. I sat there. I was going to guess 6 or 7 hours, but really it was like 3 minutes. I'm like totally feeling uncomfortable. Like, what am I doing with my face? And my forehead starts to sweat. I'm feeling uncomfortable. But on the other side of the glass, Chris and I, you could see it, just started to relax and like kind of like ease into the silence. And then he reached this beautiful equilibrium and started to talk. And that was the way we started. And he ended up allowing me to visit him 9 times. And he told me his life story.
Because in the 27 years that he was in the woods, he had
Yeah, so I mean this guy was respectful and he definitely this author here definitely has like a strong social instinct where he picked up all these clues and context of like, okay, this guy is coming from a place of silence and rejection. And I can meet him on his terms by just sitting here silently, even though it's like killing me inside as a 6'7", just like, no, 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 you know. And then the way he said he allowed me to visit him 9 times in prison, that is again like you are having to meet the 5 on their terms, like 5 being rejection, leverage type. You can enter into their world only on their terms, and they're the ones like they're not going to be like an 8, like, overpower you energetically, but they will withdraw. They will shut down. They will stop talking to you.
even spoken except for one time when he ran into somebody and he said hi.
Yeah, literally spoke 1 syllable. I said, did you speak out loud to yourself? I mean, when I went to his site, I started speaking out loud within like 10 minutes. Like, Mike, do this. Mike, what are you going to do next? I'm babbling almost just to keep myself company. He said he never spoke a word out loud. He spoke that 1 syllable, 27 years. And other people said, well, how is it possible that you can talk so well after being quiet? But the truth is,
It's in your brain.
It's in the brain, not the voice box. And your voice box does not curl up and die if you don't use it. Yeah, and he, of course.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like a 5 stereotype too. Like you're just a brain, you're just an eye on a stick, just completely cut off from emotions or even your physical needs or needs to connect with others. Though a lot of 5s, I think they do want to connect, and there's probably some like pain and grief around that, but I think that they're so held up by, first of all, like the competency component, and also the way that they are trying to understand human emotion and connection, like in a way that's so isolated to their mind. Like these are how the humans interact. This is what they do. And they'll like study the hell out of that. But it's never really getting at like the kind of raw, messy reality of like this is how humans are. Humans are messy. Humans are unpredictable.
I've read so many books. That's such a sharp mind.
I want to talk more about his life. Where was he born and raised?
He's from Chris Knight is from Central Maine. He came from a interesting family. He has four older brothers and a younger sister. They didn't have a lot of money, but people that saw their house described the inside as like a library. They all read like Shakespeare and poetry at night, but during the day they learned how to fix cars, electricity, plumbing. It was like sort of this Renaissance family where very private, keep to themselves, but everyone who knew him described everyone in the family as uncommonly bright.
And
So it's like a five house. And the funny thing is, he's probably gonna get to this, but like, no one reported this dude missing. Like, they're like, oh, he's gone. Okay.
they're very, very resourceful, right?
Yeah, he had this. Well, Chris Knight was blessed with this amazing mind where he not only was book smart, but also sort of problem solving smart. Like, if you remember the story Into the Wild with Chris McCandless, there might have been bad luck, but McCandless didn't survive one winter. He died. And Knight, after 27 years, walked out of the woods strong as an ox. So had this mind for like solving problems. If you think about it, he left the world at age 20, which is young, and never got advice from another elder again for the rest of his life, and solved all these incredibly challenging problems. I would.
I mean, that's like, rejection, competency, completely removing yourself from external guidance with this determination of like, I will figure this out myself, or I will literally die trying, but I'm not going to come out of these woods.
I don't think I would have survived a couple of months.
I'm really curious to know though, why did his family file a missing persons report?
Right. This is one of the many confounding aspects of this story. And I think I could be a journalist for like 100 years and never come across a story this fulfilling and bizarre again. Yeah. So he didn't tell his family that he was leaving, and they certainly suffered. And his family did not file a missing persons report. And I asked the local police officer, were you surprised? And he said, no. So this is Central Maine, very private families. You don't air your dirty laundry. They searched for him, and they worried about him, but they didn't want to make this a big public to do. It's a little confounding. If my child was missing for a couple hours, I'd have like helicopters around,
Yeah.
It's a different sort of ethos.
I don't think it's just Maine. I think probably the whole family is kind of like that.
To go into the woods?
I mean, that's kind of one of the profound questions. Like, why did you go there? I asked him. I said to him,
because at the time he had a job, right?
Yeah, in fact, he was installing vehicle and car alarm systems, which came in handy when he started his thieving career. Yeah, I said, why did you go? I made some guesses. I was like, did you commit a crime that you were escaping from? Was there like abuse in your family? Were you confused about your sexuality?
There must be an attachment reason.
Something. And he's like, no, those were all, in fact, I think he referred to them as very dumb ideas. He said it was both more simpler and more profound. He said all his life, he never felt comfortable with other people. Just every meeting just felt unnatural. And other people who have written about their solitude have said similar things, that he felt this incredible internal tug to leave the world behind. And he had this like really outlandish idea for how he wanted to live his life. And he decided to go and fulfill it. In a weird way, he fulfilled his like desires maybe more fully than most of us out here do.
What was the first few weeks like for him in the woods?
Well, and also like maybe he just felt like he had to, like there's this thing with withdrawn, especially if you're double withdrawn, that it's like an exposed nervous system, and the world is this constant intrusion, and he probably felt like he was crawling out of his skin and had to escape, so he just did. I think he probably wouldn't have seen any like profound meaning out of it, like this guy's trying to find. It was just a survival strategy.
He had never really camped out as a kid, and he drove his Subaru Brat up deep into the forest and put the keys in the center console and like walked into the woods at age 20 with not enough clothing, not enough food, and no map or compass, and he just sort of wandered in the woods. He was like foraging for berries. He ate some roadkill, but I think he really like felt this freedom. I mean, obviously, if he didn't like it, he would have walked out. He hadn't committed a crime. He hadn't really done anything wrong, but he found this. I think he felt satisfied, and then when he found his camping spot, I think he just was like, "This is heaven."
I mean, this spot was pretty intricate. We're going to show a couple pictures while we talk about his home. He slept on a bed in a tent and on Tommy Hilfiger pillows. Uh, were you surprised by that? You went to the site, right?
So yeah, I went to the
Several times.
yeah, I was it's in the middle of this incredibly thick, almost unnavigable woods. Like I mean, I sounded like a bull in a china shop trying to get through it, and that is like an insult to bulls in china shops. But he could walk through it silently because he had this like, I mean, it was like a piece of performance art. He could like zig and zag and step on rocks and roots. Like he would literally be silent.
Uh-huh.
And like for an interesting contrast against another five, um, and I'm obviously like not sure if Christopher here is like a 5-6 or a 5-4. I mean, I would lean towards 5-6. I don't really have like strong evidence for that, but Ted Kaczynski also, 5-6, he did the same thing where he is like had to withdraw from the encroachment of humanity and technological advancements that felt very violating to him. And, he felt at one with the nature, nine fix. And, but I do think that Ted was SOSP, and thus he still had to like interact with the world in some way. He like wrote his manifesto. He had his cause. He had his like, his bomb activism in a way that this guy really didn't. This guy was just like completely cut off from the world, other than the fact that he was engaging with ideas in the form of books. So to me, it strikes me more as like possibly SPSO. I mean, though he could be like a social blind, it would obviously be really hard to tell. The dude's never actually done an interview.
At night and not even leave a footprint. And I couldn't find my way during the middle of the day.
And his eyesight was also failing, so he just started paying attention to the sounds.
It's like, I feel like everything I'm saying is like unbelievable. He had like memorized the forest and, could move through it as the police. The night he was arrested, he showed the arresting officers where he lived. And so this police officer followed him through the woods. And I asked him, what was it like? You're the only known person in 27 years to actually see this guy walk through the woods. And this very strict, like law and order police officer, I like watched his face. He was like, can't believe it, Mike. It was like a cat. I was like, my mind was like exploded. He walked through silently. And it was like this beautiful, this law and order guy was just like driven to poetry, trying to describe this guy.
But how did no one come upon his site? Like, I mean, that's a big tent.
That was my question. Like, now it's like, that's just not believable, right? But then I went into the woods to try and find it. And like 3 feet away, you can't see it. There's these enormous boulders. There's the camp. There's these enormous boulders surrounding it, and then this thick tree, like from 5 feet away. Even in winter, when
The guy was kind of like a literal trash panda. He's like living in the woods, digging through people's garbages, stealing food.
leaves are down, you can barely see it. And then it was like he carved this like living room out of the forest. And I remember the first time I walked in there, I finally found it after like thrashing through like getting cut by thorns and bit by mosquitoes and like, slipping on these rocks. I go around these two rocks and there it is. It's like the angels are singing. It's like, it was incredible. Like it's so peaceful. Like there's even like a roof overhead where like tree branches had sort of interlinked in a lattice like thing. And like you could hear all the sounds of the forest and like sort of see a few rabbits. And it was just a light breeze that kept the mosquitoes away, but not enough to make you cold. It was like, I'm kind of dreaming of it right now.
It sounds idyllic, but how did he survive in the woods and for 27 years? I know he stole food to eat, but how did he survive the elements?
Right. So another one of my number one questions is like, I think I had like 100 number one questions now that I think about it. It's like, no fire? You're kidding me. No fire, like it's cold. And Chris Knight, he wasn't sure what year it was. He had to guess at the decade, but he had watches, and so he knew the hour and minute. Every day during winter, he got up at 2:30 in the morning, which is pretty much the depth of cold. It's when you or I would just huddle ourselves in our blankets, like totally. He knows that no matter how cold it is, the human body produces condensation, and that condensation freezes. And starting at your fingers and your toes, that cold marches up to your heart. You die of hypothermia. He got up out of bed at 2:30 in the morning and paced the tiny perimeter of his camp all night, every night, all winter for 27 winters and never even lost a fingernail to frostbite. It's like an incredible survival story. Forget the whole solitude. It's like the survival story is kind of amazing.
I later on he tells you that he saw the lady in the woods and because he came close to death during one winter. Was he scared about dying in the woods alone? Did he ever think about that?
No, he wasn't afraid at all. It's like I read a lot of accounts of people's time in solitude, and Chris Knight sort of echoed many other sentiments. He felt this sort of profound connection, as I mentioned, with the rest of the world, and sort of came to think of death as not a period on the end of a sense, but sort of like just a transition. And like, I felt that. And when you mentioned the Lady of the Woods, this was his version of like the Grim Reaper, happened to be a feminine version. And there were some winters where he ran out of food, he ran out of gas to melt snow for water. He was just very, very cold, and his body fat had all been digested. So he was like extremely skinny, and he thought he might die. He was willing to die before he left the woods. He was rather die in the woods than walk to the nearest house and ask for help. And he said he felt, I know it's hard to believe, he said he felt extremely comfortable with that. Whatever happens, happens.
What did he do?
And it's interesting because this guy is really stretching to find like meaning and poignancy in this. And I'm sure he's also trying to sell books. But I just think at the end of the day, it was this guy's survival strategy in order to cope, in order to live. Maybe it's like the only way he felt like he could survive. And that's kind of getting at the point of like attachment versus a hexa type, attachment being 3, 6, and 9, and how attachment types are usually the best equipped to navigate life, even though they have their own struggles. Where hexa can be so extreme in the sense that it's overdoing its pattern, and this guy certainly was. He was, extremely withdrawn and so shut off from the outside world. So he had, in that five-ish way, cut himself off from all anything external. And like his devotion to that was extreme, but I don't even think it was a conscious choice. I think he was just, doing his type pattern.
For fun.
Okay, well, he read books. He listened to the radio. For a little while, he had a 4-inch diagonal black and white television, but it took up too much.
In the tent.
Took up too much batteries. He stole some Game Boys, but he had a strict Game Boy policy, which would only take Game Boys at least 2 generations old. He didn't want to deprive kids of their Christmas presents, and he would steal those in a
Did
couple
you
of
wonder how he knew that? Like,
yeah, you could see the new versions. He wanted to make sure they were a couple of things. But for the most part, what he really did, again, it's sort of amazing, is what you and I would call nothing. He just sat there and like felt so fulfilled. Like the way he described it when I talked to him was that, he said he was never bored, never for an instant, just like loved just sitting there in stillness and allowing the sounds of the forest to overwhelm him.
Now he comes from a family that is resourceful. We talked about that. I always wonder, why did he resort to stealing from people? Could he just not have grown some food or fish? Like, I don't. Why steal from people?
Right. This is an excellent question. Now, Chris Knight often compared himself to animals, and he meant that as in a sort of like complimentary way. He took his cues from animals. For example, like right before winter started, he wanted to get as fat as possible, which pretty much most of the animals of the forest here in Maine also do. You get fat because it's going to be fallow. So, like in Montana, when I leave my garbage can now, a bear will often come and rifle through my garbage. Now, why does that bear do that instead of sit and pick berries? Because it's more efficient. When you live such extreme environment like Chris Knight lived, you need to be efficient. If you waste any extra energy, you'll probably die. And he knew it was so much more efficient to pick a lock and take food than hunt and fish. Now, he knew it was wrong and said he felt terribly guilty about it, but he made the decision that he would steal, because if he couldn't, then he would most likely have not survived.
How was he captured?
It's hood.
So maybe a 6-wing, I guess, if he really did feel guilty about it, but his justification was interesting of like, I'm not even really a human being. I'm a mammal. I'm just trying to survive.
I mean, 27 years is a long time to go without being caught. It took the obsessive actions of a game warden named Terry Hughes, who, like, I won't get into the details, but he called, he wired up the forest with like electric eyes and had like thingies ring to his cell phone, and basically an obsessive, actions by a game warden who.
And some pictures of him.
Yeah, so Chris Knight, this is a couple of months after his arrest, he has this long beard, but that's the night he was arrested. Now, he does not look like a hermit. Now, Chris Knight told me he always liked to be clean shaven and even shaved his head when he went on a thieving raid, which is what he was caught. And so he never looked like a hermit while he was a hermit. And then once he was in jail, he allowed his beard to grow and kind of looked exactly like a hermit when he was no longer a
And
hermit.
he did that for a reason, right?
Yeah, I mean, the man is a smart man, and being in public really sort of it tortured him. Like, he doesn't like to be stared at, and the beard, he felt like he could sort of hide behind it. That's what he told me, and it also kept track of time.
How long he had been there?
Yeah, so he called it his jail calendar. He could tell how long he'd been in jail by how long his beard was.
Has he read your?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, like growing out the beard to like further conceal his face and afford him some degree of control and privacy, and even like a barrier between him and what must have just felt god awful. All of a sudden, all this interest in him. He's just trying to survive. He's just an animal in the woods. Everyone's interested in him and prying eyes, and he's just trying to survive and cover himself.
The book?
So as soon as the book was finished, I mailed it to him immediately, and the response I got was what I expected, which was
No response.
Nothing.
Nothing. I had written a magazine article previously about Chris Knight, and it was obviously much more minor, but it had the same tone, which is that, despite the fact that he was a thief, I do feel warmly about Chris Knight, or at least in awe in some aspects of his ability
He was a poignant thief.
to survive in his mental steeliness. And he did read the article and said that he found it to be fair.
You write that his commitment to isolation.
That's so withholding. Tribes can be real assholes. It was fair.
Was absolute. Do you think by writing this book that you're denying him this? Because now people are going to know about him.
Right. I think this is an excellent question. So when I contacted Chris Knight, it was by letter, and he had gotten hundreds of letters, and he decided to write back. And when I went to the jail, he could have rejected my visit. He rejected many visits. And then even our last visit, he said to me, "You're my Boswell, you're my biographer." He called me. This is what I thought. Chris Knight, it was hundreds of journalists tried to get in touch with him. I think, in addition to all his
I'm the special one.
other smarts, he was good at game theory, and decided that if he told his story to one person in a strange way, that would allow him more privacy. He answered my questions. He didn't answer all my questions. He told me exactly what he wanted to tell me. And, person who could be silent for 27 years is going to.
Yeah, and that's like, the control and leverage aspect of five. Like, he chose this guy probably because he found him more bearable than everyone else. And it was all just like head type strategy. Like, how do I navigate this nightmare when all this attention is on me? Well, I will selectively share my story with this one idiot. And perhaps give them just enough so it'll sate their curiosity and they will leave me alone.
Going to be cajoled into answering extra questions. And this is what he has to say to the world. And the only thing he asked for me for giving me a story, he didn't want any money, he didn't want anything like that, was to leave him alone. And I feel like this book is sort of like his fence. Like, here's what I have to say. And he's
The fence.
able to, like, no longer.
It's the rejection wall. Like, I've given you what I will give you. Now just leave me alone.
We're being hounded by journalists, for example. He's told his story, and I was a very fortunate recipient of it. But he is now able to live almost completely anonymously because he's no longer being hounded. So that was, I think, his calculation, and I hope that it's true.
Where is he now?
He's living a quiet life in central Maine. We're no longer in touch. I would love to receive a letter from him, Chris. If you're watching, you can send a letter. But
Chris, I need you.
He didn't want to be my friend, and has staked out. I think he'll never feel as fulfilled as he did in his site in the woods. But he's a survivor. He'll be all right.
Did he leave you with any insights that you can share with us?
Listen, none of us are going to go away for 27 years, but I got to tell you, I mean, just look around at what's going on. Like we're all so crazy busy, and society is going like so fast. Like who amongst us hasn't felt like things are a little overwhelming?
Okay, no one cares. All right. So this guy, I don't know if there's really any more points I can make, but I think like at least with this video, with as little as we know about this guy, because he is a core five, you're seeing competency, you're seeing rejection, you're seeing withdrawn, like all in the extreme. And like I feel like getting an example this this heightened is probably rare, but I think it is helpful of like this is a five. This is what he's doing, and he's doing his fixation in the extreme where he felt like he had to withdraw from society just to survive. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's really all you need to say, but this video might be the first of a few where we're trying to pick apart like what actually is a five. What is a five doing? What does a five look like? And if you guys have any feedback or questions that you would like to see me address, um, any people that you've been able to spot in the wild that you think are a five, just drop a comment, reach out. Anyways, guys, thanks for joining me. I'll catch you next time.